In spite of the darkness of these subjects, well, no, it's dark as hell, but it's also, occasionally, it's hysterical. Better than food, man. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Better Than Food Book Reviews. I'm your host, Clifford Lee Sargent. Great to see you as always. Hope you're doing well. Get that coffee. Don't mind if I do. Beautiful day here in Florida. How you been? Got a book for you. Today is Michel Houellebecq's Interventions 2020, a collection of essays and interviews, sent to me by Paula Books. Thank you very much. I sincerely appreciate it. Full disclaimer, I'm partially sponsored by them in that they sent me this book for free. It was very kind of them, right up my alley. This is a collection of essays by and interviews with the French author Michel Houellebecq, who in my opinion is the greatest living author outside of America, living in the West and working today. Love him or hate him, he's a force to be reckoned with, has caused outrage from all sorts of folks, has been called a misogynist, a racist, an Islamophobe, a nihilist, and a genius. The latter, in my opinion, being the only label that comes anywhere close to truth. The elementary particles, serotonin, submission, platform, the map and the territory, the possibility of an island. These are nothing short of fucking masterpieces. Demonstrations of increasingly rare wit, talent, and courage. He possesses an enviable talent for cultural observation and the synthesis of ideas. But if he's not your thing, you'll quickly know it. I will say that, like him or not, however, he's become something akin to kind of like a slight modern prophet, which he'd probably agree is not a good thing, because much of the terrible stuff he prophesies does indeed happen. But yeah, I mean, we live in an era where people do indeed try to kill you if they don't like your art. He currently lives, I believe, with personal security guards, and probably will for the rest of his life after the whole Charlie Hebdo incident, which he was on the cover of that paper the day the employees were killed in Paris. Very dark story. He is, however, a singular beacon of hope, kinda. I mean, it's a weird way to put it, but yeah, a beacon of hope, sure, to an onslaught of disenchanted, depressed and jaded modern individuals, men and women, who, upon finding him, feel as if they've surfaced into fresh air after being forcefully submerged in the slowly boiling vat of poisonous tar that is modern culture. Let's face it, modern culture can be depressing. It can bum you out. It bums me out. But thankfully, there are services that can help with that, such as today's sponsor, BetterHelp. You know, over the course of the pandemic, I was really getting a lot of anxiety. It was just like this cortisol drip, you know, as if I was like hooked up to this IV, right? It was just this cortisol drip of anxiety just from reading the news every single day. Just something was getting, you know, things were just getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And then that all changed. Oh wait, it didn't. Actually, things are exactly the same way still. They're continually getting worse, and there's really no hope for anything better anytime soon. Of course, things will get better, but they're not going to get better anytime soon. Possibly not even within our lifetimes. And that can be really anxiety-inducing, you know, if you think about it too much. Anyways, BetterHelp, that is BetterHelp with a P, can help you with that. It's a weird, depressing, strange, expensive time out there. You gotta take care of your mental health. If you think you might be feeling depressed, stressed, anxious, or overwhelmed, hello. I think that anything that can help you with this is wonderful, and help you in a constructive way, not like drinking or, you know, relying on substances to distract you, you know, but rather coming to terms with, you know, how stressful things are in the world right now, and in all of our personal lives. What with the inflation, what with the economy, you know, the politics, the war, everything, right? It never hurts to take care of your mental health. And because, you know, things are probably going to get pretty tough in the next few years, and we're all going to have to deal with it. We're going to have to get through it somehow. That's the only option. So, there are ways to manage this. Exercise can help, eating right can help, therapy can help. BetterHelp offers licensed therapists who are trained to listen and help you. You can talk to your therapist in a private online environment at your convenience. There's a broad range of expertise in BetterHelp's 20,000 plus therapists network that gives you access to help that may not be available in your area. All you do is fill out a questionnaire to help you assess your specific needs, and then you get matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. That's fast. Then you schedule secure phone and video sessions, plus you can exchange unlimited messages, and everything you share is confidential. You can also request a new therapist at no additional charge anytime. So join the 2 million people plus who have taken charge of their mental health with an experienced BetterHelp therapist. Check it out. Get 10% off your first month by going to betterhelp.com/BTF, or you can follow the link below in the description. Thanks a bunch. So included in this book are his thoughts on topics as disparate as politics, writing, parties, suicide, religion, Islam, pedophilia, agriculture, Neil Young, art, and Donald Trump. In his slightly ironic essay entitled, "Donald Trump is a Good President." I can't even say it without laughing. In spite of the darkness of these subjects, it's dark as hell, but it's also, occasionally, it's hysterical. It's not a misanthropic, iconoclastic demolition by any means, right? But more than anything, a collection of quiet essays and interviews that, as with all his books, end on a down note and give off an aura of interesting but total doom in the West. Islamophobe? Yeah, perhaps there's an argument there, though he does seem to possess a heavy knowledge on the subject and religion, as he does with Christianity as well. And he believes, apparently, as I actually learned in this article on an event that he went to of some monarchists in France, this monarchist party. I think it was surprising that he showed up, and I don't think he was pro-monarchy, but he was there saying some things. But I believe that he said there will eventually be a war on Islam, and the West should prepare for it. I don't think he was advocating for a war on Islam, but I think he calls it as he sees it. And he can see these two cultures kind of coming to a head. Ultimately, they are not going to tolerate each other. So, it's interesting. The penultimate essay is it's a piece on the Roni Rona, which we're all still dealing with. Yeah, it's called A Bit Worse. A very memorable one I read before reading the book, because I remember it came out shortly after we were all locked down, as it were. And it finishes with the brilliant prophetic line that says, "We won't wake up after the lockdown in a new world. It will be the same world, but a bit worse." And as far as I can tell, he was spot the fuck on. By the way, are we still in that whole pandemic, or did we just stop caring? What happened with that? What's the latest scoop on that? Fauci's leaving? Like, what the fuck is even happening? Does anybody care? Like, does anybody know? Like, if you get it now, you're probably not gonna die if you're vaxxed. Everything here is totally open and nobody cares. It's great. It's extremely refreshing. The West Coast has completely fallen. So there are certainly some highlights in the book. Let's see here. While perhaps a downer, he is absolutely fucking hysterical. For example, page 43, The Party. The Party. This essay on the party. You know, people getting together and having fun. The Party. Page 43. The purpose of the party is to make us forget that we are lonely, miserable, and doomed to death. In other words, to transform us into animals. This is why primitive human beings have a very highly developed sense of the party. A nice dose of hallucinogenic plants, 3 tambourines, and they're off. It doesn't take much to keep them amused. In contrast, Westerners generally only end up in an inadequate state of ecstasy after endless raves from which they emerge deaf and drugged. They have no sense of the party at all. Profoundly self-conscious, radically alien to others, terrorized by the idea of death, they're quite incapable of achieving any exaltation. However, they persist. The loss of their animal condition saddens them. They're ashamed and resentful. They'd like to be party animals, or at least pass for such. They're in a really lousy situation. When I read that to my wife earlier, I just busted the fuck up. It was just so funny. As my wife said quite accurately, even if you don't agree with him, he's refreshingly honest. You're not gonna he's not gonna bullshit you. Houellebecq will not bullshit you. That's the one thing. Like, even if you hate him, like, you can at least trust him. My favorite of the collection is Approaches to Distress, the third piece, a longish essay about many things in contemporary society. It's difficult for me to actually summarize that one. I don't really know. If somebody's read this book or read that piece, because I think you can find it online, I don't exactly understand what it is, but I'd love to hear your description of it. It has several different sections, like, you know, and the first one is Contemporary Architecture as a Vector for Speeding Up Movements. Another one is A Brief History of Information, talking about mass production. Just talking about, I think, basically the proliferation of methods of very fast communication. Then one is called The Onset of Weariness. Another one is The World as Supermarket and Derision, Schopenhauer pun. The world as supermarket and derision. And finally, it ends with The Poetry of Arrested Movement. It's a description of an approach to distress, basically dropping out of the machine, so to speak, as an individual. Yeah, the methods for doing so. I hope that's an accurate description of it. I'm going to read you some. In this section, The World is Supermarket and Derision, he's talking about this kind of attitude of ironic detachment that people have, or try to maintain, rather, towards art. And he's discussing the fact that literature during this period is actually in relatively good health, as he puts it. And he says, unlike music, unlike painting, and also unlike cinema, literature can thus absorb and digest limitless amounts of derision and humor. The dangers that threaten it today have nothing to do with those that have threatened and sometimes destroyed the other arts. They are much more closely related to the acceleration of perceptions and sensations that characterize the logic of the hypermarket. A book can only be appreciated slowly. It involves reflection, not mainly in the sense of intellectual effort, but in that of looking back. There is no reading without pausing, without reverse movement, without rereading. This is impossible and even absurd in a world where everything evolves, everything fluctuates, and nothing has permanent validity, neither rules, nor things, nor human beings. With all its strength, which was great, literature opposes the notion of permanent topicality, of the perpetual present. Books call for readers, but these readers must have an individual and stable existence. They cannot be pure consumers, pure phantoms. They must also be, in some way, subjects. Undermined by the cowardly obsession with political correctness, dumbfounded by a flood of pseudo-information that gives them the illusion of a permanent modification in the categories of existence, we can no longer think what was thought 10, 100, or 1,000 years ago. Contemporary Westerners no longer manage to be readers. They no longer manage to satisfy the humble demand of a book laid out in front of them, the demand that they simply be human beings, thinking and feeling for themselves. Even more, they cannot play this role in front of another being. And yet they ought to be able to do so, for this dissolution of being is a tragic dissolution, and we all continue, moved by painful nostalgia, to ask the other person for what we ourselves can no longer be, to seek, like a blinded phantom, this weight of being that we no longer find within ourselves, this resistance, this permanence, this depth. Of course, everyone fails, and the loneliness is excruciating. Poof! Houellebecq, man, he's when he dies, it's going to be a very bad day for literature in the world. That'll be. I hope he has some kind of heir of sorts, because I mean, somebody needs to step up to that goddamn plate. That was originally published in 1992. It's perhaps even more. It's perhaps more relevant today than it was back then, which is, I suppose, why they're publishing this book. It might be the longest essay in here. I'm not quite sure. It's phenomenal. It's a very good philosophical essay about modern culture. I think a lot of how modern culture was in the early 90s translates to today. We have an even arguably more jaded, disillusioned, defensively ironic, odd, insincere culture that we all inhabit here in the West. Somehow even stupider than back then. I don't understand. Yeah, I think I've had a thought along those lines where it's like, people can't even meet the demands of literature or books anymore. Like they're not even capable. Like it feels as though my generation, and even the one or two that came before me, are not only softer, but intellectually incapable. Not all of them, of course. There are certain people who are alive who are able to do that, but it certainly seems like a lower percentage than previous generations. I don't know. Or maybe I'm just thinking of myself. In a piece on Neil Young, Houellebecq says of his music that it's like, for him, that it's as though a man were traveling through the natural elements, beaten, cold, injured, exhausted, but still moving forward, still going in spite of it all. And something interesting occurred to me. That is exactly the scene at the end of Dead Man with Johnny Depp that was scored exclusively by Neil Young. Where Johnny Depp is walking through the Native American village. He's been shot several times and he's just walking through this village with his friend Nobody. And they're going to the ocean and he's walking towards what? His death, with ferocious determination, with defiance. and I've linked to the clip below. It's a beautiful fucking scene. It's all slow motion, black and white. Yeah, and you have Neil Young's just like, it's giving me goosebumps just thinking about it. That's one of the most powerful films I have ever seen. I love that film. Probably to this day still my favorite film. I love that movie. And it's all scored by Neil Young. That scene has a real effect on me. I can barely watch it. It's too real, right? It's more real than life itself. And I'm glad Houellebecq picked up on Neil Young's music. The one on pedophilia is a short, lucid response to some questions in a dossier regarding something called the Dutroux affair, which I'd never heard of before this. And I looked it up, and it was this massive Belgian scandal in the mid-90s involving this ultra creepy guy, Dutroux, who's been called the Epstein of Belgium. But if you actually look up the Dutroux affair, it's crazy. Like, true crime story like no other. It's insane. Like, all the witnesses related to this guy, Dutroux, they all died mysteriously. And it definitely had similarities with like the whole, like, you know, clandestine groups of pedophiles with all these connections to higher circles, that kind of thing. Really disturbing true crime story. But a great piece from Houellebecq. And much more interesting in that piece, in my opinion, is a brief but powerful discussion on the states of aging. Childhood versus adolescence versus adulthood, wherein he argues that indeed adolescence is not just like a secondary transitional state from childhood to adulthood, but as he puts it, on the contrary, it's the state in which, as we gradually age in our physical being, we are today condemned to live practically until the day we die. I thought that was really interesting. Like, everybody's in this state of perpetual adolescence, you know, and that makes me think of that whole thing, like, you know, I think my mom told me that originally, like, when you're 17, everything like solidifies in your personality, and that's basically who you are for the rest of your life. I don't know where she heard that, but I feel like I heard that from her. That concept kind of terrifies me. I mean, because it just, yeah, it's so confining, right? Like, so that really shook me because, yeah, I certainly don't feel like a 33-year-old man. I still feel like a jaded 18-year-old, right? And every day waking up that way feels so strange. For all of you youngins out there watching, it gets weird. As though one should start finally feeling their age. And I'm learning that we do, but only in the sense of our mind and body's pain as it disintegrates in slow motion. Just thought I'd lighten the mood. In a couple of places in the book, he mentions this gal who I've been interested in, Valerie Solanas, this radical feminist who was the one that shot Andy Warhol. I think he actually died from complications from said shooting. Eventually, not right away, a few years down the road. But yeah, her legendary text, the Scum Manifesto. Scum is an acronym for Society of Cutting Up Men, as all the men in the audience crossed their legs. Yeah, man, she was like super bitch. But really fascinating. Dworkin, too, is a total fucking weirdo. I'm interested in reading and reviewing Dworkin as well. She's just an absolute crackpot, but these people are fascinating. They really are. They've written some crazy shit. I'm going to review more crazy shit on my channel. I'm tired of all this boring fucking literary... People call Houellebecq a nihilist. He's not. Nothing could be further from the truth, really. This book demonstrates that. Maybe more than any of his novels, actually, for me. Here's a misconception. Houellebecq doesn't write, like, nihilistic fiction. It's actually much worse than that. He writes about the world as he sees it. It's, in fact, the world which is nihilistic. And I don't think any of us can argue with that. He's just an observer. He just doesn't hold anything back. And while sure, yeah, he may have a good jab here and there, it's always merited. Like, always. And he doesn't spare himself, most importantly. He does not spare himself. Houellebecq, believe it or not, is actually one of the most moral authors I can think of. And you know, it's no surprise because he's a huge fan of like Balzac and Dostoevsky. Yeah, he's one of the most moral authors I can personally think of. More than me in some cases. For example, he genuinely seems to believe that the reinstallation of the power of the Catholic Church to its former glory would save civilization. Me? Nah. I don't think that's true at all. I think that apple has been eaten, so to speak. But I'm interested in his thoughts on it. I just think it's too incompatible with modern humans. I think that, which is a tragedy perhaps. Sure, I would agree that it's a tragedy, but we do need something new. really, really radically new, and to turn this boat around, so to speak. We do need a new religion. Yeah, I agree with that. Because what's filling in the hole is not good. Yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem. But yeah, I do agree it's needed. A new religion is needed. But in the world of grammars, tubers, and talkers, he's one of the last authors that is actually telling the truth. Like the real truth. Better than food, definitely. If you like Houellebecq, right? And that actually goes into who should read this. I'd say if you're looking to get into Houellebecq, if you don't know if you like him yet, I wouldn't start here. This is for fans of Houellebecq, people who have read him already. I would start with The Elementary Particles or the possibility of An Island if you like sci-fi. I wouldn't start with Serotonin. Submission might be all right to start with, but I don't know. His best, for me, his best? The Elementary Particles is pretty damn good. Platform is great too. It's a tough one. Yeah. Elementary Particles is called Atomized in the UK. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know where to start. What do y'all think? If you were going to recommend Houellebecq to somebody and they never read him before, which one do you think they should read first? I don't know. Not his first one, which is called Whatever. My least favorite. But his first book, which was actually about H.P. Lovecraft, I highly recommend that for everybody. That was phenomenal. Much better, in my opinion, than his first published fiction, but that's okay. I mean, he quickly rose, like, it didn't take long. So yeah, it's not like life-changing or anything, but it's definitely a terrific read if you're a fan of Houellebecq or this type of stuff. It's a good casual read mixed with some moments that deserve heavy philosophical contemplation about the modern world and our place in it. So what did I dislike? Well, yeah, some essays were better than others. Some were more interesting than others. There's several in there that I feel could have just not been included. The book wouldn't have changed. Yeah, so coffee time. For those of you who are new, thanks so much for stopping by and watching. I take the names of all the patrons on Patreon who have donated $5 or more per video to the show. I place their names in this mason jar, and for every review I do, I pull out a name, and whoever wins is sent a hard copy of the book I'm reviewing, plus a bag of coffee, roasted by yours truly. And the coffee is delicious. If you would like to get in on that and help support the show, you can go to patreon.com/books are better than food and donate $5 or more per video, and I sincerely appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. And if you donate $1 or more per video, you'll get access to the things listed in the description below, and I sincerely appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. Unfortunately, international shipping is not included. Sorry about that. Thank you very much to all the patrons, and best of luck. Okay, here we go. Sarah B. Thank you very much, Sarah. Sincerely appreciate it. You're going to receive Interventions 2020 by Michel Houellebecq, plus some delicious coffee, of course, and I hope you love both. Cheers. Well, that is all I've got for you today. Hope you enjoyed this. Please subscribe if you have not already, and hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed this, and always remember, bring a book wherever you go. All right, well, I just turned like Sam Elliott right there. Bring a book wherever you go, dude. Stay strong out there, wherever you are. Keep it up. Don't get so down. It'll be okay. Thanks so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. Have a great night. Talk to you soon. Ciao.